Hello, and welcome to episode 95 of TBR, the To Be Read podcast, where we talk about the books we love and the topics that interest us. I'm Patrick Stemp, and with me as always is Michael Ronn and John L. Monk. How are you guys doing?
Great, Patrick. How are you?
Good.
Good.
And tonight we have joining us Anais Concepcion. She is one of the co-hosts of the Literary Roadhouse podcast. And how are you?
Hi, I'm doing really well.
Thanks for coming. So what we'll start off with, as usual, is our weekly roundtable about what we've been reading over the past week. And since John hates to go first, why don't you go first, John?
Well, before I go, I just want to say that I'm Facebook friends with Maya Good. We've chatted about this and that here and there, and I listened to the show one time. It was pretty cool. What have I been reading? I'm actually reading a super secret project kind of thing that I can't talk about, which is horrible. I got a secret and I'm not telling. But on top of that, I'm also reading, obviously I'm still reading Salem's Lot. I'm sure the audience is really bored by now, but there are vampires now. They've been showing up, and I'm close to 50%.
I don't remember that book being this long. Like it's not one of his 1,000-page tomes, right? Isn't it just like a 300 or 400 page? Are you just like having a hard time slogging through it, or is it longer than I remember?
It seems pretty long compared to all the other books I read. Like, you know, when you watch the Kindle and like the 2% turns into 3% turns into 4, it seems like it's taken a long time for that to happen. And I'm even reading kind of quickly, I thought. I really do wonder how many pages it is. One thing, though, is I do really enjoy all the little slices of life about the characters and the town and what store burned down and you know 1920 and things like that. I mean, that's all kind of cool, and it's one of the reasons why I'm reading it is because I want to sort of see how like other people just write, I guess. Other than that, the book I'm writing, I'm rewriting the last couple of chapters because I got some negative feedback on the ending. It wasn't horrible feedback, but you know, I'm working on it. It's not published. I can fix it. So that's it.
Okay, Michael, how about you?
Yeah, I actually was on the Literary Roadhouse podcast on Saturday, and one of the books that I just finished reading this past week was Your Heart is a Muscle the Size of a Fist by Sunil Yapa. And Anais and I both read that, and that is, I don't know if I mentioned it when I was on last, but it's a literary fiction novel. It takes place in 1999 during the World Trade Organization riots in Seattle, and you know, it was a pretty big deal back then. There were protesters and people got hurt, and it was really politicized, and it takes place throughout the perspective of several people who are there present during that day. So there's the protester side, there are the police, and then there's a delegate who's coming in from Sri Lanka who is trying to get some stuff done at this event that a lot of people are protesting. And as I mentioned on that show, it was just great. I really enjoyed it, and the writing was great, and I loved how it took a political event and just made a great novel out of it. So I read that, and I also started Midshipman's Hope, which super late because that's our book club for the month, and yeah, I'm just now starting that, so going to be mad sprinting through that, and especially relishing the spanking scenes that are in this book because that just seems to be what everyone's talking about. I had no idea. I was kind of shocked, like my jaw was like on the floor when I read it for the first time.
It's not spanking, it's corporal punishment in the military, a space military.
AKA spanking.
Yeah.
And they're all 13-year-old boys. And nubile, okay.
and people doing the spanking do it with great alacrity. Let's put it that way. So I'm reading that, and then I need to finish up The Burning Room by Michael Connelly, which is book in the Harry Bosch series that I don't know what it is. I just can't seem to finish it, even though I love the novel. So that's pretty much my week.
Okay. Anais, how about you? What have you been reading lately?
Well, like Michael just mentioned, I finished last week Your Heart is a Muscle the Size of a Fist, and that discussion that we had will be published on Friday, which was fantastic. And now I'm starting sort of in between book club books for my podcast, Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. I don't know if any of you have read it. think.
No.
No,
I used to see it everywhere, though.
Because it won awards, Sci-Fi Awards, supposed to be very good. And the idea is that it's post-apocalyptic, but it's not taking the apocalyptic event itself. It's looking at a few years out. People are living in sort of nomadic tribes, and there's one that's trying to bring back art now that civilization has stabilized somewhat again. So that's kind of the thread, and it sounds interesting. And then I read a lot of short stories for the podcast as well, so that's what I've been up to.
Okay, cool. So I've been reading. I didn't finish anything this week, but I picked up Downfall, which is the second book in Nerys Wheatley's post-apocalyptic zombie series. I've been enjoying that. I put down Robert J. Sawyer's newest book, Quantum Night. I found about 30% or 40% of the way in. I just kind of lost interest because there really wasn't a whole heck of a lot going on. And I've just got other things I'd rather read, so I think I'm going to kind of close that one up. And I started reading Destroyer, which is a book by Chris Fox. It's I don't know if you were following along at all, but it's the novel that he just finished. He did like a novel in 21 days, and he posted like videos each day of the words that he was writing and his whole process. So that book came out, I think on Monday, today is Monday. I think it came out very recently. It might have even just been today, but I grabbed it and read the first few chapters, and I'm enjoying that.
I got it too.
Did you?
Yeah.
And that's it. So it's interesting to read a book when you've seen it sort of go through the process of creation, kind of add something to it, so it's neat. And that's my week in reading. So we can turn things over now, and I think Michael is going to take the helm and start asking some questions. And go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, well, Anais, we've got a lot of questions here. We did this with our previous co-host, Jamie, when he first came on the show. We had, I don't know how many episodes we had, maybe 6 or 7 or 15 up to that point. And so we did that just to kind of get to know him. And we also did the same thing when John came on. So we just kind of have a series of rapid-fire questions that we ask, and he'd love to hear your answer and just go from there. So are you ready?
Yeah, I'm game.
All right. So first question. Name an author you would most like to have drinks with.
That one's easy. Kurt Vonnegut.
Nice.
Hey. Look at this coffee mug I just picked up this weekend.
Ooh, I'm jealous.
There you go.
Is it all just Kurt Vonnegut, or is it different authors? Like
nope, it's all Vonnegut, just like quotes from various books. There's a ton of quotes on there. Nice little picture of them. I saw that this weekend at the Green Earth store and had to have it.
Yeah.
What's your favorite Vonnegut book?
I mean, I know it's cliche to say Slaughterhouse-Five, but I guess because that's what turned me on to Vonnegut, it's always going to have a special place in my heart. And then Galapagos was weird, so then I guess that's why Slaughterhouse-Five stays in the special place in my heart. And I read it fairly young, and then I read it again much older, so it held up, of course.
I would. Have you read? So my first Vonnegut was The Sirens of Titan. Have you read that?
No, it's on my. I have this dry erase board. That's all the books that I want to read but never get to because of the podcast. So it's on that dry erase board.
If you want a quick one, it's a one that kind of makes me laugh out loud every time I read it. Is Timequake. That's one of his sort of later books, but it's hilarious.
Yeah, I should probably add that to my list as well, and then just look at my dry erase board and feel sad that I don't have time.
I think we all have some version of that dry erase board somewhere, whether it's on our walls or on our Goodreads list. I know that's my guilty. It's like 1,000 books long.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. So Kurt Vonnegut. And next question. E-reader or e-book? Actually, no. E-book or, paperback or e-book? I just can't talk today. I typed the question wrong.
Well, I mean, I think it's probably unpopular to say ebook, but ebook all the way. I travel a lot. I live abroad. I mean, it's just easier. It's convenient. Everything's in one spot. I know there's a lot of people who are like, oh no, you're supposed to say paper, but no.
Yeah, I think all of us kind of feel the same way.
Oh, good.
I haven't read a physical book in. I mean, I guess if you don't count graphic novels and some poetry collections that I've read, I haven't read a physical novel or a nonfiction book in like 3 or 4 years.
But probably, I
forgot
think
how
you
to.
probably had like there's some books that should be paper, like Wonder Book. I think we would all agree is something you should read in physical copy. But yeah,
Yeah.
ebook all the way.
Yeah, I was gonna say I forgot how to buy print books. So for the very first book for the book club podcast, we were reading Atwood, her latest book, The Heart Goes Last, and I'm like, okay, let me just get it in paperback. Why not? I love Atwood, and I accidentally bought the large print version for people who are harder seeing, and it was just massive. Like never doing this again. Sticking to ebook.
It's like a doorstop.
Yeah.
What kind of device do you like to read on normally? Like your
Yeah, I have
phone
a
or?
Kindle. And my Kindle, yeah, Paperwhite.
Yeah. Yeah, I read mostly on my phone these days. I just can't seem to pull up my tablet. I don't know why, even though it's more convenient.
Yeah.
How about you, John? You're awfully quiet over there.
Oh, well, I like. Are you asking if I like e-readers? Yeah. But
I thought you were going to say audiobooks or something.
No, it's funny. It's not that I don't like audiobooks. I just never got my head around them. Well, there was a really, really good one I listened to. It was about the Wright brothers. It was narrated by the guy that wrote it. Shoot, I was going to talk about it one day, but deer in the headlights now, and I can't remember what it is. It's this old guy. It just blew my mind. Everybody thinks the Wright brothers just invented an airplane, and then the rest is history. There's so much to the story. Like every story that's real, I guess. I do have a question, though. You're all literary and stuff, Anais, and I was wondering, do you like Cormac McCarthy? Just crossing my thing.
Yeah, but I have to say I haven't read him in a long time, so I feel like
Yes.
I can't really go there. But yes.
I think that's a yes. I think that's an unqualified yes.
Yeah.
I highly recommend Blood Meridian because it's my favorite, and it's one of the books that I pick up wherever I'm at, and I just read it, and I'm just happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't he the one that wrote All the Pretty Horses?
Yeah, that's a really good one. That's a really
Okay.
really good.
Yeah, I've read that one. I was also going to say, because you were talking about audiobooks, so I actually listen to a lot of audiobooks, but I have this weird mental block where audiobooks is for nonfiction and actual reading is for fiction, and I can't get over it. There's something about fiction where it's like I want my brain to interpret what's being described, whereas with nonfiction, it doesn't matter to me as much.
That's interesting.
Maybe I feel the same way because obviously I listened to nonfiction and I was fine with it, but I tried listening to the Dresden Files, the first book. Wonderful narrator. He read it the way I'd want my books to be kind of read, and I just found it hard to kind of pay attention. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I find with me it's definitely the narrator that has a lot to do with it because I really didn't understand like what an audiobook could be until I'd heard The Beam, Season 1 audiobook from Johnny B. Trent and Sean Platt for the first time, and it was like super theatrical, and I find that I tend to lean towards that rather than just simply reading the book. I don't know, maybe that has something to do with it too.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Well, next question here. Let's see. What was the first book you ever loved?
Well, for a long time I answered that question saying The Hungry Caterpillar, but I think really the first book that I remember having a moment of like, that's amazing is The Faraway Tree. It must have been 8 or 9, and there's this character named Mitcher What's-His-Name, which is a very obvious pun, if you could even call it a pun, but at that age I felt like I was in on some joke. So it just kind of, I think it started developing like a relationship between me and reading. That's the first time I noticed that I am being affected by something that the author is doing. So that one stayed with me.
Awesome. Well, how do you find the time to read?
Mostly I schedule it like it's a job at this point. So usually it's the first thing I do for an hour in the morning before my boyfriend wakes up on weekdays. And then on weekends I'll try to find 2 to 3 hours somewhere for like a big chunk. And then during chores, I listen to audiobooks. But I really have to treat it like a job or else I'll get distracted with everything else there is to do.
Sorry, did you just say during church?
No, chores.
Chores.
Like cooking, cleaning, yeah.
Chores.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I heard that too. So.
It was church. I'm like, no. But I've gotten better at cooking because I want to listen to an audiobook. So before I would only do like 15-minute meals or less. And I'm like, oh, there's like 2 hours of prep, fantastic, because I can just listen to something for a while.
2 hours of prep. That's awesome.
Yeah, yeah, making like dough out of potato. I'm like, sure.
I tried to cook listening to an audiobook once and like I almost burned the house down. So my wife doesn't let me listen to stuff while I do chores anymore. That's awesome.
Mm.
Okay. Next question. I have to hold it up to my face here because it's like really fine print. Do you prefer standalone books or series?
Probably standalone. I mean, I've read a few series, but I have a tendency to read like the book of a series and not the rest. Like I read The Name of the Wind and Ender's Game and Lives of Locke Lamora, and that's it. I didn't keep going, which I know most people who read those will keep going. I know. I can hear like the.
They have such great sequels, especially all of them.
That's what everyone says.
Especially all of them.
I know, everyone tells me that. But then, I'll read the Mad Adam trilogy by Atwood, no problem. Actually, here's a painful confession. I haven't read past the 4th Harry Potter book.
Oh, you and Patrick have something in common. How far have you gotten, Patrick?
Yeah, but I haven't.
Quick 5?
I think Azkaban was where I gave up.
Spankings.
That's the 3rd one. Yeah.
It was the spankings.
Well, when book 8 comes out, you guys can redeem yourself, or book 8.
Isn't it out already?
Is it? Oh yeah. Well, it's on pre-order. I thought. I didn't think it was actually out.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
That's the one in North America, right? That you got a little bit of.
Yeah. So that is out.
Isn't it like an interpretive dance or something with Harry Potter themes? That's what I thought it was.
I thought it was just the rough. I thought it was just like the pre-production script of the play that's going live in London.
Well, there is that too, but she also did the Native American thing, I think. But I think I would be more likely to have continued with that series. I mean, I wasn't really enjoying it to begin with, but I would have been probably more likely to continue with it if I hadn't seen the movies 2 or 3 times. Like, the movies are fantastic.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I think for me, I think I did enjoy them, but there just comes a point where it's like, okay, like it stops. I think I'm really into the way an author can surprise me. So once I learn an author really well and their tricks, it's like I'm sure that any plot that they give me will be great, but I jump to another one. So I think that might be.
So do you think that you are a reader of writers or a reader of stories? Because it sort of sounds like, in that respect, you're a reader of writers in a way. You're very interested in the writer and the writing and the stuff that's in the words. Not that you're not into the story. Of course you are, but you know what I mean.
Right. Yeah. No, I think you have a point there because. So last year I finished Snow Crash by Neal Stephenson, and I loved it, absolutely. And I'm like, I'm going to read everything he's ever written. But I already learned him, so I haven't actually done that. And I feel like that's a pattern that I have. And I'm sure that everything else, I think I'd have to be convinced by somebody from the outside that says they're exploring a completely different set of, like a theme or a lesson or some political thing or whatever that is, or an aspect of society. So it's applying that brain to a new topic, I'd probably still go down that path. But once I feel like I think, for example, using Harry Potter as an example, it's like, okay, well, we're just kind of still staying in the wizarding world for a long time. That's great. I'll come back to it eventually. And then I just sort of forget.
Can I interrupt again?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you had me at Snow Crashed. How do you like that book? I've tried to like that book, and it's like, how I want to like it so I can be cool like everybody else, but I can't.
Yeah.
How do I do it? What am I supposed to be liking it for?
If you accept that Neal Stephenson is trolling you about a third of the time,
Okay.
like he's just messing with you as the reader, then you can kind of laugh with him. Because there's a lot of jokes where it's like self-deprecating in a way. I mean, the main character's name is Hero. Like this is, you know what I'm saying? Like
Hero
he's very
protagonist, yeah.
Yeah, hero protagonist. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and the main villain, Raven, is this big, buff, Aleut guy who has a nuke strapped to him as like an insurance scheme, basically on his life.
I didn't get that
Like
far.
that's just. Yeah. Oh, Raven's great, and he runs around in a kayak and he's like surfing the ocean. And he just has like a nuke strapped to him. Like when you get to just the absurdity of it, and you realize that Stevenson is messing with you, it's a lot of fun.
All right, then I want to give it another try because you're obviously pretty smart, and like so many people I know seem to like it, and I just feel dumb. So I gotta give it another try, and I'll just lie if I don't like it. I mean, I'll just say
That is if you ever get through Salem's Lot.
I'll never get through it. Ugh,
Someday.
that's right. He knows
All
a
right,
lot of words. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah. Well, since you were talking about villains, Anais, who's your favorite villain?
Kathy Ames from East of Eden, because she was probably the first villain that I saw that sort of shaped how I see villains. So she's just a woman, but the way that she's described at her birth, I don't know if anybody's East of Eden, Steinbeck, it's like huge. The first chapter is just wildflower.
Am I frozen or is she frozen?
She is.
She's a little frozen.
Give her a second.
Yeah. Have any of you
Excuse me.
guys read East of Eden?
No.
Oral
No.
making of that person, and that sort of like stuck with me, and she's just vicious.
Hey, Anais, are you there? You kind of broke up a little bit. You froze.
Yeah, there's a slowdown.
Okay, we can hear you, but your video's frozen.
Yeah,
so you
your
can keep
video's
going.
frozen.
Are you in Costa Rica
Can you hear
right
me?
now?
Yeah, I can actually take my little bandwidth thing here down.
Yep, and your video's
Bandwidth
back.
usage
Yeah, you're
to
back.
Very low.
I don't know if she heard me. That's okay.
Go ahead, Michael. You have another question?
Yeah, your next question, Anais.
Yes.
Who's your favorite protagonist?
Can you hear us?
Yeah, can you
Is her video frozen?
I
sorry
think-
for our listeners. It's hard to tell what's.
Yeah.
Is that better? No.
Yeah, we can see you
Yeah,
and
just come
kind
back
of
in.
hear you. Just keep talking so we can hear you.
Yeah, it keeps coming and going. So
I think we need to put money into the Google machine. It's
Is there-
throttling us.
Can you pay them to like not have this happen? I mean, so they give you more bandwidth or something like that?
I think this is
No.
why. I think this is why some people are moving to Blab, which is something
Yes.
that we may. Oh, she dropped out.
Dropped
So
out.
we'll see if she comes back in. So that's something that we might want to talk about at some point. Is moving this
Yeah.
over to Blab and seeing if that works better. Because Google is. We haven't had as many problems as we used to, sort of consistently, a year ago. But
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah.
anything you want to talk about while we're waiting? It's probably
Well,
getting.
Since we're talking about Blab, I was actually using Blab over the weekend because Anais does use it
Mhm.
for the Literary Roadhouse, and I was using it, and I thought it worked pretty well. It was interesting. It feels a lot like Hangouts, but there's a lot of like comments and engagement like on the right side of the screen.
Mhm.
So like people are talking and they're like, it's kind of like Periscope where they click the screen and a bunch of hearts fly up over the screen.
Yep.
It's kind of like that a little bit, but it wasn't bad.
So have either of you been to see Batman v Superman yet?
Hi.
Not yet.
No.
Yeah.
Hi, you're back.
Yes. I don't know if Michael told you guys. I'm in Costa Rica, so randomly there's bandwidth issues.
I read it on
No
your
worries.
blog, actually. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, been down here 6 years now.
Do you miss New York?
Yeah, well, I miss my family and friends, but I don't know if I miss the city. I did initially, and then I've chilled out here, so I'm enjoying that instead.
Were you born in New York?
In Jersey, yeah, in Hoboken.
Okay.
Cool. Well, I don't know if you heard our previous question, but who's your favorite protagonist?
Oh, favorite protagonist. Okay. So this question is really hard because I don't know. I think I'm one of those people that the author can convince that their protagonist is amazing, and I'm like, yeah, I totally agree with you. But I'd say that the protagonist that has stayed with me the longest, who I think about, is Shevek from Ursula K. Le Guin's The Dispossessed. And he isn't necessarily my favorite in terms of, I don't think he's the most interesting character, but his politics and the way that he navigates his life is really interesting to me. So I think of him a lot. But favorite, I don't know. Whoever I'm reading at the moment.
Cool. All right. Well, how do you feel about banning books?
Yes.
Yeah. Is this where we're
No.
opinions different?
This is where we get political.
Oh, well, okay. So, of course, I'm against banning books completely, but I've recently listened to Dark Money by Jane Mayer. It's a nonfiction book that just came out and talks about how there's a lot of money that goes into politics that funds nonfiction to make it seem like these are mainstream ideas when they're not. So I want nonfiction to have a disclaimer, just like who paid for this. That's all. Don't ban it. Just let me know up front. But just for nonfiction, fiction can do whatever it wants in my book.
That's interesting. So it says that authors are being paid to write books.
Yeah. So if you this is in the nonfiction world, in the nonfiction political world. So it's some fringe. So the example that they use here is the Koch brothers, who had fringe political beliefs back in the 70s and 80s. Were like, well, what if we started paying for people who have fringe beliefs like us, scholars, to then have endowed seats at universities and write books, and we pay for their fellowships, and then it looks more mainstream, and that it worked. Like if you see over time, the center of American politics has moved towards them through this sort of, like they call it the raw material. The raw materials, these nonfiction books that try to normalize what was once fringe politics. So I'm like, it'd be great if there was just a disclaimer. Like, you can read this, go ahead. You don't need to censor it, but just know where this came from. Sort of like where the parts came from, yeah.
Yeah, I love those dark conspiracy books like that.
Yeah, but this is by a journalist who's been doing this for decades, and it's very well cited. So I'm just like, yeah, it's really good. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so do you like to read, and this kind of ties into John's question too, what he mentioned earlier, are you a story person or a writer person? Do you like to read about the authors of your favorite books, or do you prefer not to know?
I usually look them up after I read them, rarely before or during, and it's something like afterwards. But it's never something that I plan or have a strong opinion about. It just sort of happens. Like I'll finish a book and then I kind of want more from this person, so I'll look them up a little bit, and then as we discussed, I don't actually read more, but that's what happens.
Cool. And how do you pick what to read next on your TBR list?
Conversations like this, really. Horoscopes, tea leaves, I don't know. It just sort of happens.
Eeny, meeny, miny, mo,
Yeah, this came up, okay.
Yeah, I think we all do that. And then, okay, so 2015, if you had to talk about your top reads of the last calendar year, what would you talk about? So
I discovered Elena Ferrante. It's a pseudonym for an Italian author. Amazing. So I read Days of Abandonment and My Brilliant Friend from her. Snow Crash, which I mentioned earlier. I'm trying to think of what else. I thought I was going to love The Heart Goes Last by Margaret Atwood, and I was disappointed because I've liked so many of her past books. So that's in the other direction. But yeah, I think those were my favorites in 2015.
Have you read any of Atwood's poetry?
No, I haven't.
I've always liked her poetry more than her fiction. I never knew why. But
really?
It's pretty cool.
I'm not really a poetry reader, but maybe I should be. I don't know.
Yeah, I know Maya loves the poetry. I wonder if she's read any of Atwood's poetry, but haven't found anyone who's talked about that yet. But it's cool. Okay, so what's on your list for this year to read?
So I always have two running lists. I have the podcast list, so we're reading next month The Sellout by Paul Beatty, which is a modern-day satire that, it's talking about some really ugly, horrible things like slavery, and then satirizing it in 2016. So we'll see how that goes. And I want to read A Head Full of Ghosts by Paul Tremblay. I don't know if you guys have heard of that.
I want to read that too.
It's supposed to be really good psychological horror. Yeah. Actually, we're going to have that as our Halloween podcast book. So it's nicely timed. Yeah. And I want to go read some Kuntz. I haven't read Gravity's Rainbow yet, which I feel like I'm supposed to. I've read other Gaiman, but not Good Omens. So I'm kind of going back and filling in the blanks.
Can I recommend some Kuntz to you?
Well, you have to read Good Omens. No.
I know I have to read Good Omens.
My ears perked up at Good Omens.
I got to read that too. But
Yeah.
if you read Kuntz, there's this wonderful book that really breaks the mold for Kuntz.
Hmm.
It's a thriller, and you don't stop moving, of course. But it's got something. It's got Kuntz when he's able to throw a little bit of humor into it. It's not Odd Thomas, although you should read that. It's called Tick Tock. It's one of his best.
I'm just
So,
glad you didn't say Watchers.
Watchers? No,
Yeah.
no, I didn't. Was there humor in that?
Oh no, no. And if
Some
there
of
was,
his
it was
stuff sucks,
bad. Yeah.
but his good stuff is good, and his sucky stuff is not. So, just like anybody.
Yeah. All right. Well,
Have any of you guys heard when you're talking about books to read? I had downloaded one. It was one of those kind of like just saw it and it looks interesting, and there was tons of people talking about it. It looked like The Humans by Matt Haig.
I think I've seen that. Yeah.
Have you heard of this one or seen it? No?
No.
Okay.
No.
Cool. Well, next question, Anais. Do you use Goodreads?
I'm technically on it, but I'm very bad at it. I always forget it's there. I only remember when I finish a book, so I can just put it on the red shelf. I haven't even customized my shelves. Like I said, my TBR is not a dry erase board. I'm a little prehistoric.
Goodreads is prehistoric, so it's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, we all have our opinions about Goodreads. We will
Still
open that.
loading from the first time I
So
opened
I
it.
don't. Yeah. It's funny because I haven't really used Goodreads myself, but I've heard lots of opinions about Goodreads, and there's like a lot of authors who are like just like take some issue with the way that reviews are done or something like that. I haven't dug too deeply into it, but I've
Yeah.
never read a review on Goodreads, so I'm just
Yeah.
yeah.
I think authors love the idea of authors and readers both love the idea of what Goodreads can and should be, but in terms of what it actually is, I think is where people
Well,
just kind of
I
fall
like
short.
Goodreads. I like Goodreads because one of the things it gives you is that you don't get on Amazon, even though they own Goodreads, is if I'm looking at a book, it immediately will show me if any of my friends on Goodreads have read it, reviewed it, liked it, hated it, whatever. You don't get that on Amazon. You just see a bunch of random people. So at least on Goodreads, it's more of a social network where you can friend your friends and then sort of watch what they're reading and see if they like the same things you do. So that's one
Yep.
benefit of it.
And like you, Patrick, I mean the to be read list management
Mhm.
is how most people use it. So,
Hmm.
all right. Well, we have some more questions here. Do you ever fall into a reading slump? And if so, how do you get out of it?
Yeah, I definitely do. And I feel like that's not something that somebody who like does a literary podcast should ever say, but I do. And normally it's always because I open some book that I'm forcing myself to get through, but it just isn't grabbing me. Like the last book that this happened with me was The Boxman by Kobe Abe, and I'm reading it and I know it's genius and I know it's great and I just can't bring myself to sit down and focus. So what I usually do is I'll just abandon that book. I tell myself temporarily, but time will tell. And then I'll go and I'll read something super pulpy or just like very like tropey genre, and it's kind of like a palate cleanser, like it refreshes me.
There was.
So
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
no, I was going to say, so you do finish the books even though you don't like them, or are you just the kind that just never comes back?
Depends. So let me give you an example of the palate cleansers, by the way. So I was reading Infinite Jest, and I got to a point where it was like a slog. Like there's parts of Infinite Jest where it's like could have used an editor, and so then I just stopped and I was like, let me just go read 50 Shades of Grey, just the first one. Why not? Just as like, just whatever. And it was terrible, but it for some reason like having that kind of like terrible whatever experience. Then I went back to Infinite Jest and I was like, yay, and I actually finished it. So sometimes that trick will work.
Maybe you just like pulpy, tropey stuff, and you could just say, that stuff that you got to just sort of slog through, and maybe it's not worth it, if you don't want to finish it,
Yeah. I think it depends on the book because there's some literary stuff that I genuinely love, and there's some pulpy stuff that I'm like, nobody should call this pulpy. This is very good.
Hey.
It's
Sorry.
true.
I hear it all the
There's some pulpy
time.
stuff yeah, but there's some that transcends the genre or is doing something really interesting. So yeah, I definitely do like a lot of quote unquote genre fiction, and I tend towards sci-fi and fantasy. Like I don't I rarely get swept up in like one of those romanticized historical romances, or I don't know. Yeah, I like fantasy and sci-fi. Yeah.
So, what pulls you out of a story?
Probably, I think bad pacing is the best way to put it. Like I think that's really what happened with Infinite Jest, for example. Like there's just a point where it's just like this has slowed down way too much, and then it's hard for me to keep going. I once forced myself to read a book that was really bad. It was The Island of St. Helena, where Napoleon died. It was a historical fiction. It was terrible. Do not recommend. But I forced myself to read it, and the entire book was like horribly paced. And I think that stayed with me. Yeah. Or I think it's chapter 11 in The Picture of Dorian Gray, where it just talks about all the things he owns. If I ever reread it, I would just skip that chapter. Yeah.
True. Over description, over writing. Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you're like, that might be where an audiobook is good. Like if you're reading Oscar Wilde and Stephen Fry is the narrator, it might make it easier to get through something like that.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I could listen to Stephen Fry read like the dictionary, you know.
Have you read American Gods?
Oh
Yep.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
we've talked about that a lot on the show.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I love American Gods, but I read the 10-year, like unedited, not unedited, but the version that Gaiman wanted to publish initially, and then he cut it down because of the advice of his editor. I don't know if you guys read that one, but there
I
is
want
a
to.
section. Okay, there's a section where it's just like shadow chilling in Lakeside for way too long, like nothing happens. And Lakeside's great, like there's some great stuff that happens in Lakeside when it happens, but in this, like, when I'm reading a book and I haven't read the original cut and I'm reading this one and I know what the editor probably asked Gaiman to cut just from reading it, that's what I mean about pacing. That pacing really takes me out of it.
Yeah.
I'm like, Yeah.
Thank you for saying that, because it's funny because I stopped reading American Gods right at that section when he was in Lakeside. I was like, so maybe I read the unedited version, because I just wanted to gnaw off my arm. I mean, just nothing happened. So I'll have to look at.
I read it years ago, so I'm sure I probably read the original, like, shorter version.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I don't know why they do that, because, like, you know, Stephen King did it with The Stand. Lucas did it with Star Wars. Like, people need to stop. Like, once it's out there, just leave it the hell alone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so a couple more questions. What books define you?
I think any book that I've mentioned, probably I remember because it shaped me in some way, so it's come to define me. But I think culturally, like the book that I read and I'm like, this is my life. Somebody wrote about my life, was The Brief and Wondrous Life of Oscar Wilde by Junot Diaz. So it's in the part of Jersey, New York, that metro area that I grew up in a similar sort of like very immigrant-heavy area. And even though Junot Diaz and his characters are Dominican, my family's Cuban, but there's enough cultural overlap to make it feel really familiar. So that was exciting.
Cool. So one final question, and I have to pick which one is the best one. What's your favorite fictional place?
Probably the one city in China Mieville's The City in the City. I don't know if any of you have read China Mieville. So he's famous for his Baslag universe. He's called the modern day Tolkien, but if Tolkien wasn't, except he's in the gray. He doesn't do like black and white, good and evil stuff. So in The City in the City, which is not in that universe, it's Basel and Ulcoma. So it's one city that shares an infrastructure, but the lines between these two city-states intersect. So you can be on an avenue, and on the east side of the avenue, you're in Basel, and on the west side of the avenue, you're in Ulcoma. So it has a Berlin Wall kind of effect, except that wall is snaking throughout the entire city. So in one apartment building, your neighbor could be in the other city, and you're not allowed to recognize them. You're not allowed to interact with them. And if you even do so much as acknowledge them in a passing glance, there's like this all-seeing secret police called the Breach that will arrest both of you. You have to unsee the other side unless you cross through this one archway that's supposed to be like the border. It's fascinating.
Cool.
I think I've tried to read China before and haven't. What would be his most famous book? I mean, I know he's won a ton of awards. What would be can you think?
Yeah, I think the one that people talk about the most, I think, is The first one in the Baslag series, which is Perdido Street Station, which I actually didn't read.
Yeah,
I started with the second one, The Scar. I thought The Scar was great. But then I read Iron Council, and I didn't like Iron Council as much. I still don't know what happened in the final battle. I have no idea. Because his writing can be a little... There are sections where you can like hear him grunting through the prose, pretty much. And then there's a section where he just flows. So like the opening of The Scar is like a little overwrought, but if you get through it, then the rest of the book is fantastic.
Cool. Well, awesome recommendation. So, final question. Where is the best place for people to find out more about you?
They should go to literaryroadhouse.com. We actually have 3 shows out right now. There's a weekly one where we discuss a short story, a monthly one, which is a full-length novel discussion, and then there's one for writers. It's a weekly short story writing podcast where 3 authors are writing a new short story every week and then talk about that experience. Or they can go to anaisconcepcion.com. I'm also an editor, and I'm supposed to put my writing up there, but I haven't yet built up the nerve.
Okay. Well, thanks so much for coming and having a chat with us this week.
Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. And so next week, for our listeners, it will be our 3rd, I guess, monthly book club. We're going to be talking about John's pick, Midshipman's Hope. So tune in next week for lots of spanking, and and we'll see you then. So have a great week, guys.
Take care, everyone.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.